Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, name is Abitonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security to defend Israel. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing. It's a great pleasure to be joined today by the founder and chairman of IDSF, Brigadier General Amir Avivi. General, thank you so much for joining today.
My pleasure.
General, there are so many questions that our viewers have sent in over the weekend about really what is happening on the ground in Lebanon, the state of IDF operations, why there are so many rockets being fired into Israel, and of course, the state of the agreement between Israel and Lebanon. What can you share with us?
Well, it seems that we're moving forward towards an agreement. I must say that Hezbollah has been hit very, very strongly in a way that makes the Iranians encourage Hezbollah to stop the fighting. I can say that if Hezbollah was able to sustain shooting Israel and assisting Hamas, they would have done that. But instead of being in a reality where Israel is under a war of attrition and they keep shooting endless amount of capabilities, we are in a reality where they feel they cannot sustain anymore. They were hit hard and they're looking for a way to end this. And the ending changes the reality in Lebanon. This agreement requires the complete dismantling of all Hezbollah capabilities in South Lebanon. And this is something that the US in this agreement has to manage and monitor, and are responsible to make sure that this actually happens. The other thing is that there is a side agreement between the US and Israel that if all the mechanisms now do whatever it's to prevent Hezbollah from rebuilding itself. I think probably this is the most crucial issue talking about the agreement. I think the biggest lessons Israel has from the 7th of October, we cannot afford terror armies on our border. We cannot let terror armies build themselves for decades and then huge war and with an event like the 7th of October. We need to make sure these armies don't exist. They cannot build themselves on our borders, and Israel will insist on imposing this reality and not letting Hezbollah rebuild itself, whether it's by attacking constantly any attempt in Syria, but also if the Lebanese army, UNIFIL, US, France, all these different actors that are involved in this agreement do not make sure that Hezbollah does not rebuild itself, then Israel will feel free to attack whenever and wherever is needed to keep degrading Hezbollah and not rebuilding themselves. I must say that not from an Israeli perspective, but from a Lebanese perspective, of course, it would be very wise to, from their side, to really seize the moment and try to dismantle Hezbollah as a terror army. They have one new opportunity. I'm not sure it will exist this opportunity again in the future. So it will be interesting to see what they do about that. Now, we have to remember that this agreement disconnects the connection between Hezbollah and Hamas. Basically, Israel can continue its path to victory in Gaza without Hezbollah being involved anymore. This is a big humiliation for Hezbollah that basically entered the war to assist to a certain level and Hamas and ends the war in a complete shift of reality, where they have to completely be dismantled in South Lebanon, and they've been heated very hard, and they cannot renew their capabilities. So at the end of the day, not only Israel is going to move forward with the destruction of Hamas, but Hezbollah has paid a huge price for their involvement and for shooting Israel for such a long time, and have lost all their strategic assets that have been destroyed in the last 2 months by Israel. But I think that really what might define the future of Lebanon and Hezbollah is not only the agreements that are being done now, but also the biggest question of all: what will happen with Iran? Is the next administration willing to do what is needed to do to attack the nuclear sites and the military sites of Iran and bring down the Shia axis? It's obvious that if Iran is hit, this will impact dramatically all its proxies. And there is a big question: what will happen? Another issue we have to understand is that Israel is not running straight to a done deal, but it's saying, okay, we want to see this actually happening. Let's do a deal of 60 days. And during these 60 days of ceasefire, dismantle all of Hezbollah's capabilities. So now the responsibility is on the Lebanese side. They need to really dismantle everything. And the US needs to supervise them doing so. So I think seeing the positions of Hezbollah dismantled, it's a big deal. And if in these 60 days, by the time that President Biden will start his presidency, they don't do what is needed, then we might go back to a different approach. But there is an interim time that Israel is giving a chance to dismantle them, and we'll see what happens. I think that I would assume that Prime Minister Netanyahu remembers well how the Obama's administration ended, and the fact that they didn't support us in the Security Council with Resolution 2334. I think that for Prime Minister Netanyahu, it's important to show goodwill and cooperate with Biden's administration until the last day, making sure that the relationships are okay. He could have said, you know, I'm not doing anything, I'm waiting for Trump, and really create a daylight between him and the current administration. But I think that the approach of Netanyahu is to work with the current administration, do the ceasefire while dismantling Hezbollah. The Israeli forces are still inside Lebanon. They're not going to retreat if we don't see Hezbollah dismantled. So there is a condition that Israel won't withdraw before Hezbollah's, the Lebanese army dismantles Hezbollah positions in South Lebanon. So, as with any agreement, there are risks, there are also big opportunities. The IDF would like to send more units to Gaza to finish the job. We have the hostages. We need to move forward with the destruction of Hamas. From day one, I remind that the goal of war in the south is to eradicate Hamas as a military and governmental entity. The war in the north is to bring back the citizens safely home. Israel didn't put a goal that says eradicating Hezbollah, because eradicating completely Hezbollah by Israel means conquering all of Lebanon, something that Israel really didn't want to do. And therefore, the ability to really dismantle Hezbollah, hopefully in the future, is dependent a lot, at the end of the day, also on the different parties in Lebanon and their motivation to do so, and the US. And this will be a big challenge also for the next administration.
Thank you,
Moshe?
General. Thank you, General, for sharing all of that. And so many viewers are sending in similar questions related to the hundreds and hundreds of rockets that are being fired from Hezbollah into Israel. So you say that the IDF, the Air Force, has successfully been destroying much of Hezbollah. Are you able just to relate that to their capacity to nonetheless continue to send all of these rockets to Israel?
So, for years we have been talking about the fact that Hezbollah has accumulated 150,000 rockets, missiles. They had thousands of drones. So from the very beginning, we were dealing with a massive, massive amount of capabilities. But the IDF with the Mossad managed to really, really cripple them, hit them very, very, very hard, and most of their strategic capabilities in a way that they were left with maybe, I don't know, 20,000. It's an amount that is maybe similar to what Hamas had at the time, most of them short range, and they are shooting them ineffectively to Israel. Yes, it's not nice to get shot 200 or 250 rockets in one day, but it's very, very different the way the IDF is hitting them very, very precisely. Every hit is a major blow, while they're shooting sporadically what is left of the rockets. And because they know that there will be probably in the coming days an agreement, and because they were hit so hard and humiliated, they're trying to get some success at the last moment, that they want to show that they still have some capacity to shoot. Israel, without conquering all of Lebanon, cannot destroy every single rocket they have, cannot do it from the air. We have degraded them, set them back maybe 20 years, but they still have a certain amount of rockets. And now, within this agreement, we need to see Lebanon and the international community stepping in and also intervening and dismantling many of these capabilities. It's not that Hezbollah is not going to stay with anything. I mean, they will have some basic capabilities, but these are not capabilities that endanger strategically Israel the way we were facing this huge danger for so many years. And certainly, if we don't enable them to rebuild themselves, we live in a completely new reality. And we'll have to see in Lebanon where things go. I mean, the Lebanese people have a responsibility also to shape their own future.
Thank you. So just to understand a little bit better the mindset of Hezbollah, what incentive do they have if they do in fact sign this agreement to actually allow Lebanon or other international actors to dismantle them? Meaning if their entire mandate is to destroy Israel, why would we be naive to think that we sign an agreement and suddenly they kind of have a reversal in their outlook in life?
So first we have to see exactly what happens, but I can say that in the Shia mentality, they are used historically to big losses. And they have this set of mind that they might lose, like the big fight in Karbala, and then take a long time to reorganize and build themselves. They also understand that in 2 months there will be a new administration that is going to be willing to support Israel and equip Israel with everything it needs and maybe attack Iran. So although these organizations tend to be very, very extreme, they're not stupid. They recognize and they know when they lost and when they are in a problem and when they might be eradicated, and they calculate their steps very, very carefully. I think that this connects also to the Iranians, who are very, very worried about what will happen next and what's their fate and whether they're going to be attacked and in what way. So everything Hezbollah is going to do will be connected also to the way Iran looks at the reality. But we, as Israelis, we have to take in account that these guys want to build themselves again, that are going to try to organize and regroup and make sure that if this is not dealt with, we keep freedom of operation and we deal with this. Now, we have to deal with this in two ways. When it comes to South Lebanon, this is the Northern Command. Even if it means sending back troops, boots on the ground into Lebanon to deal with a certain buildup that might be in the future. Beyond South Lebanon, this is more the Air Force. Really having freedom of operation to attack in any scenario that we see a buildup. So basically, if we see again in the Dahya them accumulating precise missiles or things like that, we have to attack it. We have to attack it immediately and constantly. Just the way we're operating in Syria. The reason why, from all the 7 fronts we have dealt with, the one front that we were shot the least in this war was Syria. Why? We're operating constantly in Syria, degrading them all the time. And this is what we need to keep in Lebanon. And I'm saying this, that we, media and social media, in meetings with the Prime Minister and the Minister of Defense, and making sure that we don't slip again. We're not going to let a reality again of terror armies going to be built. We are going to be the watchdogs that will make sure that the idea of not letting any buildup on our borders again will be kept constantly.
Thank you, General. So after the 2006 Lebanon war, the war ended, but then that buildup continued until this day. And you're saying that you and IDSF is working very hard to make that message clear in Israeli society that we can't just sign an agreement and move on with our lives. So my question is, do you think that the leadership of the government, the army who you interface with, do they get that message? Do they see that this can't be a repeat of 2006? Meaning you're telling us the message you're sharing. My question is that being heard and agreed upon?
I think that overall what I hear in the army, yes, they understand that we cannot afford a build-up again. I think that the trauma of the army of the 7th of October and what it means to be attacked by a huge terror army that we let grow like that, it's not something the army would like to deal with in the future. The army has no interest to see Hezbollah amassing forces on the border in the north, or Hamas building itself again to be able to attack like the 7th of October. So definitely there will be a motivation to keep freedom of operation and degrade them constantly, or dismantle them as we are doing in Gaza. And yes, we need to push for dismantling also Hezbollah and dealing with Iran and its capabilities. It's not something we should stop doing.
General, I want to thank you for taking all these questions, and a big thank you to our viewers who send in so many questions. We try to address as many as we can, whether you're sending them in the live Zoom, whether you're watching on YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, consider liking and subscribing. General, let me ask you a question that a lot of our viewers are asking. This agreement, to what extent do you think Israel wants to enter into this agreement because it's the right time? And to what extent is it based on considerations in the U.S. and pressure coming from the U.S.?
I think that it's a combination of many things. It's a combination of Israel wanting to bring back the citizens home. It's a combination of the ground forces that have achieved all the missions, and we want to finish the missions in Lebanon, because in Lebanon, basically, it's endless. It's endless. We can go on another year shooting warehouses, shooting rocket launchers here and there. It seems like Israel is beyond the peak of the success of what it's done, and now it's starting to look a bit again like an attrition war and not a decisive win. And if you are not willing, or you don't want to mobilize the whole ground forces to conquer Lebanon, and this is not the plan, it makes sense at this stage to seek a deal that will be best for Israel, but a deal that Israel can agree to, a deal that keeps Israel's ability to be proactive and make sure they are not rebuilding themselves again.
And then in terms of not rebuilding, can you just expand on that? What does that mean in terms of a blockade from the sea, or blocking trade routes in Syria, preventing Iran from wiring money? What does that actually look like moving forward?
So wouldn't be a full blockade in the sea, but it would be if there is any intelligence about ships that might carry weapons or capabilities, then definitely the Navy can stop ships like that, as we did, by the way, in the past, ships from Iran, like the Karin A. It means any attempt to smuggle through Syria into Lebanon, also attack, if possible on the Syrian side, if not the Lebanese side. And it means that if they actually start building capabilities inside Lebanon, and Israel says, okay, we know this is the warehouse, this is where they are building, and then it's not dismantled with the Lebanese army and with the US checking that indeed things happened on the ground, and we see that the whole mechanism is not effective, then we attack ourselves and do what needs to be done to make sure there is no buildup. So yes, Israel is transferring some responsibilities to the international community, who is willing to take these responsibilities and do something about it. Now it's a test for the US. It's a test also for forces who are not Hezbollah in Lebanon, for Britain, for France. And we see where this goes. But I think that Israel, from the experience we had in 2006, we are approaching it very carefully. We understand who we're dealing with. We know that the international community hasn't shown much of really effectiveness when it comes to imposing these agreements, and we keep options open. We need to operate again, and do what's needed to do.
So if I understand correctly, organizations like UNIFIL, or other international entities in Lebanon, you're saying Israel would not rely on them in order to make sure that the deal is being kept up, but rather Israel directly would monitor what's happening in South Lebanon?
So Israel said this time to the US, with all due respect to UNIFIL, we don't trust the UN, we don't trust UNIFIL. We want the US to be responsible for the implementation of the agreement, and the US needs to show that it's able to really implement it. And again, if we are not able, then the agreement between Israel and the US says, then Israel can take responsibility and deal with this alone.
General, we're just about out of time. I want to ask one final question, different topic, if we can speak about Gaza for a moment. Are you able to share how much area there still is in Gaza to be taken by the IDF? How much area still remains that is under Hamas control?
Well, I think that I don't know what is Hamas control, because Hamas has broken as an army. It has, guerrilla units, partial capabilities in different places, mostly in the area of the city of Gaza, partially in specific areas in the central camps, especially Deir el-Balach, and maybe a bit at the outskirts of Khan Yunis. The army has destroyed almost completely Hamas in the northern part, Jibalia, Bet Lahiya, in Rafah, in most of Khan Yunis. There are vast areas in Gaza, which is not a big place anyway, that there is no citizens and no Hamas. Palestinian society is mostly in the humanitarian zone, in the area of El Mawasi and Deir el-Balach a bit. And so there are not many areas where Hamas is really effective. And I think that there is a momentum now. And if we bring a bit more units from the north to the south, we can really make a difference. And I think this is also something the government and the army are taking in account. We have the responsibility to bring back the hostages. In order to bring back the hostages, we need to enhance our attack on Hamas and bring it down as soon as possible. And this is also a reason why move towards an agreement in the north and being able to concentrate on Gaza.
Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you so much for joining this briefing and sharing all of that. Thank you for all that you are doing to defend Israel. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.